Jessica Chen, you thought this company was your playground? You spent our money on secret affairs. Your career ends tonight.
I'm David, 34M, been married to Jessica, 32F, for 8 years. Jessica works in marketing at Morrison & Associates, some mid-tier consulting firm downtown. She's always been obsessed with climbing the corporate ladder, networking events, power lunches, the whole 9 yards. Me? I'm an accountant at a smaller firm. Steady job, decent money, nothing flashy, but it pays the bills. Apparently that wasn't exciting enough for her. So, last Friday night, Jessica drags me to her company's quarterly celebration at this overpriced hotel downtown. You know the type. Crystal chandeliers that cost more than most people's cars, waiters in bow ties serving champagne that tastes like carbonated disappointment, and middle management pretending they're important while secretly planning escape routes to the nearest bar. I hate these corporate circle jerks with every fiber of my being. The forced small talk, the fake laughs at unfunny jokes, everyone pretending to care about quarterly reports and workplace synergy. But Jessica had pulled out every guilt trip in the book, saying it would look bad for her career if her husband didn't show up. I planted myself strategically near the coat check in the back corner, which gave me perfect sightlines to watch the circus while staying close to my exit strategy. Call it survival instinct or social anxiety, but I knew I'd need a quick getaway before someone cornered me to discuss their kid's soccer tournament or their thoughts on the latest company restructuring. These events had a way of sucking the life out of me faster than a vampire with caffeine obsession. Jessica was in her absolute element, working that room like a politician running for office. She'd been floating from group to group in this glittery dress that probably cost more than most people's rent, that sharp laugh of hers echoing across the ballroom and getting more grating with each glass of cheap champagne she knocked back. I'd been married to the woman for 8 years, so I knew the signs. When Jessica got drunk at work functions, she turned into this weird hybrid of motivational speaker and reality TV villain, all confidence and cutting remarks disguised as humor. I've been checking my watch for the 15th time in 10 minutes, calculating exactly how much longer I had to endure this social torture before I could reasonably claim exhaustion and head home when I heard it. Her voice cutting through the ambient noise like a knife through butter, crystal clear despite the distance between us. Honestly, I could dump him tomorrow if I wanted to. He's completely worthless to me at this point. Time slowed to a crawl as those words hit me like a freight train carrying betrayal. I turned slightly, just enough to catch a glimpse of her through the crowd, and there she was, head tilted back in that way she did when she thought she was being particularly clever. She was surrounded by her usual work crew, nodding along like she'd just delivered profound wisdom instead of casually destroying her marriage. But here's the kicker that really made my stomach drop. Her boss, Michael Thompson, was standing right next to her. Not just standing, but close enough that his hand kept brushing against her arm in a way that looked way too familiar, like they'd done this dance before. The rational part of my brain wanted to march over there and demand an explanation. The emotional part wanted to grab the nearest champagne bottle and make a scene that would end up on YouTube by morning. But instead, I just stood there like an idiot, watching my wife of 8 years casually announce to her coworkers that I was disposable while her married boss played grab ass like he was auditioning for a harassment lawsuit. You know what's funny about moments like these? Everyone talks about the dramatic confrontation, the big blow-up, the screaming match that clears the air. But sometimes the most devastating thing you can do is absolutely nothing at all. Sometimes silence is the sharpest weapon in your arsenal. So I didn't yell, I didn't storm over there and cause a scene. I didn't even let my face show what I was feeling, which was roughly equivalent to being hit by a bus driven by my own stupidity. Instead, I simply turned around, grabbed my coat from the rack, and walked out of that hotel ballroom like I was just stepping out for fresh air. The night air hit me like a slap across the face, cold enough to make my eyes water, but somehow not cold enough to numb the burning sensation in my chest. I pulled my coat tight around me and started walking, my dress shoes clicking against the pavement in a rhythm that sounded suspiciously like the countdown to my marriage's execution. I must have walked 3 blocks before I stopped under a streetlight like some kind of noir movie cliché, pulling out my phone with hands that were steadier than they had any right to be. I scrolled through my contacts until I found a name I hadn't called in probably 2 years. Ryan Martinez, my old law school buddy who'd somehow ended up in corporate compliance. Funny how life works out sometimes. The phone rang twice before he picked up, sounding slightly confused but not entirely surprised to hear from me. "David, dude, it's been forever. What's up?" My voice came out calmer than I expected, steady and controlled like I was ordering coffee instead of potentially nuking my entire life. Ryan, you still tight with the executive team over there? Yeah, why? You sound weird, man. You're going to want to check on something right now, tonight, before morning comes and everything gets complicated. I told him just enough to get the wheels turning, gave him just the right breadcrumbs to follow the trail I wanted him to find. Because here's the thing about guys like Ryan. They're natural-born investigators, and once you point them in the right direction, they can't help but dig deeper. Within minutes of hanging up, I knew the first domino had started to wobble. Because here's the thing about guys like Ryan. They're natural-born investigators, and once you point them in the right direction, they can't help but dig deeper. See, I'd remembered something Jessica mentioned maybe 6 months ago during dinner conversation about the new compliance guy seeming really smart and funny for a lawyer. She'd even mentioned his name, Ryan something. At the time, I'd filed it away under work gossip I don't care about. But now, standing in the cold with my wife's betrayal still ringing in my ears, that random piece of information suddenly seemed like the most important thing in the world. I can be there in 15 minutes, Ryan said after I explained what I'd witnessed. But David, if this is some kind of marital revenge thing, it's not revenge, Ryan. It's justice. There's a difference. 20 minutes later, while I was sitting in my car 3 blocks away sipping lukewarm coffee from a gas station cup that tasted like liquid disappointment, Ryan was back at that hotel ballroom witnessing the real show. Thanks to the magic of modern technology and his well-placed text updates, I had a front row seat to watch my wife's carefully constructed world come crashing down like a house of cards in a hurricane. According to Ryan's play-by-play, which he was sending me in real time like some kind of corporate warfare correspondent, Jessica was still holding court in the center of the room when everything went sideways. She'd apparently moved on from trash-talking her worthless husband to regaling her audience with some story about how she'd completely revolutionized the marketing department's approach to client relations. You know, because nothing says professional accomplishment like taking credit for other people's work while your boss plays grab-ass with you in front of half the company. The music was still thumping away some generic top 40 garbage that probably cost the company more in licensing fees than they paid their interns in a year. The lighting was still that awful combination of disco ball sparkles and fluorescent hotel ambiance that made everyone look like they were recovering from mild food poisoning. And Jessica was still the star of her own little show, champagne glass raised high, surrounded by her usual crowd of workplace sycophants who laughed at her jokes because they were too scared of corporate politics to do anything else. But then something shifted. Ryan described it like watching a nature documentary where the gazelles suddenly sense lions closing in. There was this subtle change in atmosphere, conversations trailing off mid-sentence, people glancing toward the entrance with expressions ranging from curious to terrified. That's when Regional Director Harrison made his entrance. I'd never met the guy, but Jessica had described him enough times. Late 50s executive who'd clawed his way up the corporate ladder by stepping on faces. The type who could make grown adults wet themselves just by clearing his throat. But the man who stormed into that ballroom wasn't the composed, intimidating executive Jessica had always described. According to Ryan, this guy looked like he was 30 seconds away from a complete meltdown. Face red enough to stop traffic, tie crooked, moving through the crowd with focused rage that made people scramble out of his way. The music didn't stop immediately, but conversations sure as hell did. You could literally watch silence spread across the room like ripples on a pond, starting from wherever Harrison was and expanding outward until the only sound was bass line from mindless dance music nobody was dancing to. Jessica was apparently so caught up in her own performance that she didn't notice the change until it was way too late. She was mid-sentence when Harrison's voice cut through the music like a chainsaw through butter. Jessica Chen. The woman actually jumped, literally jumped, and spun around with an expression that went from confident to terrified in half a second. Her champagne glass slipped from her fingers and hit the marble floor with a crash that echoed through the suddenly silent ballroom. Golden liquid splashed across her glittery dress and the shoes of people standing nearest to her. Harrison marched straight through the crowd, which parted for him like he was Moses. When he reached Jessica, he didn't hesitate, didn't pause for dramatic effect. He just grabbed her by the arm hard enough to make her wince and roared, "What the hell did you do?" The entire room went dead silent. Jessica's face went through about 17 different emotions in 3 seconds. Confusion, fear, anger, desperation, and finally this awful dawning realization that whatever was happening was bad. Really, really bad. Thompson tried to step in, actually put his hand on Harrison's shoulder and started to say something about taking this somewhere private, but Harrison wasn't having it. He turned around and shoved Thompson back so hard the man stumbled into a cocktail table, sending glasses flying. "You think I wouldn't find out?" Harrison screamed. "You think this company is your personal playground? You think I'm some kind of idiot who wouldn't notice when my employees are playing house on company time and company money?" That's when the phones came out. People were pulling out cell phones like they were at a concert, except instead of recording their favorite song, they were documenting the complete destruction of a woman's career in high definition. Jessica looked around the room with the desperate expression of someone who just realized all her bridges weren't just burned, they'd been nuked from orbit. Her co-workers, the same people who'd been laughing at her jokes all evening, were now staring at her like she'd grown a second head. Some were literally backing away, putting distance between themselves and the radioactive fallout. In less than 2 minutes, her entire empire of workplace charm had crumbled into dust. By midnight, Ryan texted me. Jessica's phone was buzzing nonstop with calls she wasn't answering. By 2 a.m., she'd been escorted out by security, not arrested. Corporate malfeasance doesn't usually involve handcuffs unless there's actual embezzlement, but definitely given the old "don't let the door hit you" treatment. Her work access was locked by morning. Email, company credit cards, building key card, parking spot. All gone faster than you can say corporate investigation. It's amazing how quickly a company can erase someone's existence when they put their minds to it. While this was happening, I spent the night driving around aimlessly, sipping progressively worse coffee and feeling strangely calm. You'd think watching your marriage explode would be more traumatic, but honestly, it felt more like finally getting confirmation of something I'd suspected for a long time. By morning, I'd made my decision. I wasn't going to crawl back home with my tail between my legs, ready to forgive and forget. I was going to be something much more dangerous. The guy who'd been planning his next move while she was busy destroying her life. There's nothing quite like the sound of your soon-to-be ex-wife stumbling through the front door at 8 a.m., makeup smeared across her face like a Jackson Pollock painting made of mascara and regret. I was sitting at our kitchen table. Well, technically my kitchen table now, but we'll get to that little detail in a minute. With my laptop open and a cup of coffee that actually tasted decent for once. Funny how everything tastes better when you're not choking down the bitter flavor of a dying marriage along with your morning caffeine. Jessica looked like she'd been put through a blender set to life-destroying scandal and then reassembled by someone who'd never seen a human being before. Her hair was doing this weird thing where half of it was still trying to maintain the elegant updo she'd started the evening with, while the other half had apparently given up and was hanging in defeated strands around her face. That glittery dress that had cost more than most people's monthly rent was now wrinkled and stained with what I could only assume was a combination of champagne, tears, and the crushing weight of professional humiliation. But it was her eyes that really told the story. Gone was that confident sparkle she'd had when she was holding court at the party, replaced by something that looked like a deer in headlights. If the deer had just realized the headlights belonged to an 18-wheeler carrying a full load of career-ending consequences. "What did you do?" she hissed at me, going straight to accusation without bothering with pleasantries. I didn't look up from my laptop immediately. After 8 years of marriage to a woman who thought dramatic timing was a substitute for actual communication, I'd learned about power dynamics. When I finally looked up, I kept my expression neutral. Not smug, not angry, just empty. Like I was looking at a stranger who'd wandered into my house by mistake. "Good morning to you too, sweetheart. Rough night?" That's when she really lost it, going off about betrayal, about how her career was on the line, how I'd sabotaged everything she'd worked for. The whole performance was impressive in its complete lack of self-awareness. Here was a woman caught conducting an affair with her married boss on company time and money, and she'd convinced herself I was the villain. "You have no idea what you've done," she kept saying. "My reputation, my career, everything I've built." "Everything you've built?" I interrupted, finally closing my laptop. "You mean the career you built by screwing your boss and stealing credit for other people's work? How dare you?" "How dare I what? Tell the truth? Point out that you've been lying to me for months? Or are you mad because I finally stopped being the quiet, worthless husband you could push around?" That's when I decided it was time for the big reveal. I'd been planning this moment for hours, ever since I'd gotten home and started making calls to lawyers and accountants who specialize in untangling the messes that cheating spouses leave behind. You know what, Jessica? You're absolutely right about one thing. I am going to destroy everything you've built. But not because I'm vindictive, because you said I was worthless and I wanted to prove you wrong. I opened my laptop and turned the screen toward her. See this? Divorce papers, already filed. And this? Bank statements showing how I've transferred our joint savings into accounts with only my name. And this one's my personal favorite. Property deed transfers, removing your name from the house, title, car titles, and pretty much everything else we own together. Watching the color drain from Jessica's face was like watching time-lapse video of someone realizing their entire life had just been repossessed. She grabbed the kitchen counter for support, knuckles going white. "You can't do that," she whispered. "Actually, I can. Turns out when you've been paying attention to things like joint accounts and property ownership, oh wait, we don't have a prenup because you said they were unromantic. You learn a lot about protecting yourself when your spouse decides to flush your marriage down the toilet." I stood up and walked over to where she was standing. "You said I was worthless to you, that you could dump me anytime you wanted. Well, congratulations, Jessica. You just got your wish. Except instead of you dumping me, I'm dumping you. And unlike your approach, I'm doing it legally, thoroughly, and with documentation." The silence that followed was absolutely beautiful. For once in our entire relationship, Jessica had nothing to say. When I got back that evening, I'd made myself scarce to give her space to absorb her situation. The house was eerily quiet. I found her in the living room staring at her laptop with desperate intensity. That's when the real fun started. I was upstairs packing when I heard the bedroom door slam open with enough force to rattle picture frames. "David," her voice carried down the hall, high-pitched and desperate. When I strolled into the bedroom, Jessica was standing in front of our walk-in closet with her mouth hanging open. She was staring at the empty space where my clothes used to hang, head turning slowly like she was watching tennis played by invisible players. My side of the closet was completely bare. No suits, shirts, jeans, ties, not even the ratty old bathrobe from college she'd been trying to throw away for years. Just empty hangers swaying in the air-conditioning breeze. "Where are all your clothes?" "Moved them." Seemed like the right thing to do, considering. That's when she noticed the manila folder sitting on the dresser where my cologne bottles used to be. It had her name written across the front in my careful handwriting. Her hands shook as she flipped it open. Bank statements showing account closures, property transfers, insurance modifications. Every piece of paper was another nail in the coffin of the life she'd thought she was living. But it was the USB drive that really got her attention. Labeled "Play Me." She plugged it into her laptop and the audio started immediately, her own voice clear as a bell. "Honestly, I could dump him tomorrow if I wanted to. He's completely worthless to me at this point." Then her laugh, that sharp, dismissive sound that had been echoing in my head. "You recorded me," she said. "I didn't have to. You recorded yourself. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time to capture it." That's when her phone started ringing. The caller ID made her face go white. Mom. Margaret Chen was the kind of mother-in-law who made others look like librarians. She'd built her own real estate empire from nothing back in the 80s and could smell financial trouble from 3 counties away. Even from across the room, I could hear Margaret's voice through the speaker, sharp and cold. "Why did I just get a notice that your name has been removed from the condo title?" And there it was. Jessica realized her domestic drama had gone nuclear. What she'd forgotten was that her mother had co-signed on our major purchases, which meant when I'd started transferring assets, Margaret got notification letters for everything. "I've spent the entire day on the phone with lawyers and accountants," Margaret continued. "Your husband has systematically removed you from every significant asset you own together, and he did it legally, cleanly, and with enough planning to make my estate attorney weep with professional jealousy." "But Mom, I can explain." "No, you can't, because there's only one reason a man spends this much effort planning his exit strategy. Because his wife gave him a damn good reason." Margaret's voice softened, but became more devastating. "You always thought David was quiet because he was weak. Quiet men aren't weak, Jessica. They're dangerous. They watch, listen, plan, and remember everything. You just found out why. You made your bed. Now you get to lie in it. Alone." The line went dead, Jessica's last lifeline had been cut. Tuesday morning rolled around like a hangover you didn't earn, and I was sitting in my new temporary apartment, a surprisingly decent one-bedroom place about 15 minutes from our old house, drinking coffee that actually tasted good for once and catching up on emails when my phone started buzzing with notifications. Not the usual spam and newsletter garbage that clogs up everyone's digital life, but actual messages from people I knew. People who under normal circumstances wouldn't text me unless someone had died or the world was ending. The first one was from my cousin Jake. "Dude, is this your wife?" Attached with a link to what looked like a Twitter post, which seemed weird because Jake usually spent his social media time looking at pictures of trucks and complaining about gas prices, not diving into workplace drama. But curiosity eliminated the cat, as they say, and I was feeling pretty immortal these days. What I found was beautiful in the way that car accidents are beautiful, horrible and fascinating and impossible to look away from. Someone had taken the audio from Jessica's little performance at the company party and set it to a video clip of her from that night, all glittery dress and confident smirk, raising her champagne glass like she was toasting her own brilliance. The caption read, "When you think you're untouchable, but karma has other plans." The audio was crystal clear, clearer than I remembered it being in person, actually. Honestly, I could dump him tomorrow if I wanted to. He's completely worthless to me at this point. Then that laugh, that sharp, dismissive sound that had been the soundtrack to my marriage's funeral. Whoever had edited this thing had isolated her voice perfectly, removing most of the background noise so every cruel word hit like a slap across the face. But here's the kicker, and this is where I had to give credit to whoever had put this together. They'd added a little text overlay that appeared right as she said, "worthless to me." It read, "Plot twist, he wasn't." The post had over 2,000 likes, 400 retweets, and brutal comments about workplace toxicity and karma. My phone kept buzzing as more people sent me the link. The video was spreading through Jessica's professional network like wildfire. Comments from people who knew her were savage. Her former assistant posted crying laughing emojis. Co-workers were sharing stories about her attitude and general unpleasantness. By noon, the video had jumped platforms. TikTok, Instagram, even LinkedIn business coaches were using Jessica's viral infamy as a teaching moment about professional ethics. She'd become a meme about comeuppance, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. A week later came the call Jessica had been dreading. Thursday morning, 9:15 a.m., someone from HR. "Miss Chen, we need you to come in for a meeting today at 2 p.m. Conference room B. Bring your employee handbook and any company property." When HR tells you to bring your handbook, that's corporate speak for, "We're about to destroy your career." When they ask for company property, that's, "We want to make sure you can't steal anything on your way out." According to Ryan's play-by-play, the room was set up like a tribunal. Patricia from HR, Williams from legal, someone from compliance, and Harrison himself at the head of the table. Jessica took the single empty chair position so she faced everyone like a defendant. Williams opened his briefcase. There's no sound quite like a lawyer opening a briefcase full of evidence that's about to ruin your life. The monitor lit up with scanned receipts from hotels in Miami, Chicago, San Francisco, all showing 2 guests, all charged to company accounts, all coinciding with Thompson's travel schedule. Then came audio files of Jessica and Thompson discussing their collaborative sessions and how to coordinate them to avoid suspicion. Jessica's face had gone ashen. Her hands shook as she reached for the water glass. "Miss Chen," Harrison said, "your employment with this company is terminated, effective immediately. Furthermore, we'll be pursuing all available legal remedies to recover misappropriated funds and potential criminal charges." Criminal charges. The words hit Jessica like a physical blow as she realized this wasn't just about losing her job. This was about potentially losing her freedom, too. Security escorted her out with a cardboard box of personal belongings. Her career wasn't just over. It had been obliterated so thoroughly the wreckage would be visible from space. At exactly 3:40 that Thursday afternoon, I was sitting in my car across the street from her former workplace, sipping a surprisingly decent latte from the coffee shop down the block and watching the corporate equivalent of a public execution unfold in real time. Not because I'm some kind of sadistic monster who gets off on watching people's lives implode, okay, maybe a little bit, but because sometimes you need to see the final chapter of a story you helped write. The building where Jessica used to have an office was one of those generic glass and steel monuments to corporate mediocrity, that probably looked impressive to people who'd never seen actual architecture, all gleaming surfaces and sharp angles that were supposed to convey success and innovation. But mostly just screamed, "We spent way too much money on a building that looks like every other building in the financial district." From my vantage point across the street, I had a perfect view of the main entrance, which meant I'd have front row seats when the star of today's show made her final exit. The weather was perfect for this kind of thing, if you believe in cosmic justice and meteorological irony. Gray clouds rolling in from the west, the kind of sky that looks like it's about to open up and dump rain on everyone's parade. The wind was picking up too, sending loose papers and plastic bags skittering across the pavement like urban tumbleweeds. At 3:41, the main entrance doors swung open, and there she was. Jessica emerged from the building like she was walking underwater, moving with the kind of slow, deliberate steps that people take when they're trying really hard not to fall down. She was carrying a cardboard box, one of those generic office supply store boxes that companies use when they want to make your termination feel as impersonal and humiliating as possible. The contents looked pathetic from where I was sitting. A small desk plant that was probably already dying, a few picture frames, what looked like a coffee mug with some inspirational BS printed on it. 8 years of corporate climbing, networking, A-kissing, and backstabbing, and it all fit in a box that probably cost $3 at Staples. Her power suit was still immaculate, navy blue and perfectly tailored, the kind of outfit that cost more than most people's rent, and was designed to make the wearer look like they had their crap together, even when they absolutely didn't. But the woman wearing it looked like someone had sucked all the life out of her through a straw. Her shoulders were slumped, her head was down, and she was moving with the mechanical precision of someone who was running on autopilot because their actual consciousness had checked out sometime around the moment they realized their career was over. When she saw me in my car, she froze, stood there staring at me for 30 seconds like I was a ghost. I didn't smile, didn't nod, didn't acknowledge her at all. Just sat there calm and collected, letting her see exactly how little her destruction affected me. Then I started my car and drove away without looking back, leaving the scene of Jessica's professional execution behind me like a bad memory that had finally been resolved. Jessica's career is over. She'll spend years explaining why she was terminated, why there are viral videos of her being cruel, why her former company is suing her. She'll live knowing her own words destroyed everything she worked for, and that the man she called worthless orchestrated her downfall with surgical precision. Thompson got fired too. His wife filed for divorce when the recording surfaced. Apparently, pillow talk about manipulating business travel for affair logistics doesn't stay private when compliance gets involved. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not hurt or desperate for understanding. I'm just done. Finished with her and the toxic dynamic that poisoned our marriage. She called me worthless, and I proved her wrong in the most comprehensive way possible. Now I'm in a decent apartment, drinking coffee that actually tastes good, reading books without someone criticizing my choices, living peacefully without walking on eggshells around someone who thought cruelty was cleverness. The best revenge isn't hot and explosive. It's cold, calculated, and absolutely final. It's not about making someone suffer in the moment. It's making them understand their suffering is the natural consequence of their own choices. Jessica was wrong about one thing, though. I wasn't worthless. I was just getting started.